It started like any other evening. Tracy and I were just winding down after dinner, sitting on the couch, half watching TV, half talking about our day. Things were fine, I guess. Nothing spectacular, but nothing bad either. But that night everything shifted, like some invisible line in the sand got drawn, and I had no idea I was about to cross it. Tracy was acting a bit off. Nothing crazy, but enough to make me start noticing the small things. Like how she kept looking at her phone, her fingers tapping away but not saying a word. Usually she'd share something funny or a meme with me, but tonight she was silent, her attention elsewhere. I shrugged it off, thought maybe she was just tired or stressed. After all, it had been a long week at her job, and we both know how those late nights can wear you down. But then came the phone call. It was around 10:30, and Tracy's phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. Normally she'd leave it there and let it ring, but not tonight. She jumped up like it was an emergency, a little too quick if you ask me. She answered the call in the kitchen, her voice dropping lower than usual. That's when I knew something wasn't right. Tracy had always been open about her work calls, but this one felt off. When she returned, I asked, "Who was that?" She smiled, a little too bright, too fake. "Oh, just a work thing," she said, brushing it off. But I could tell she was hiding something. The energy in the room had shifted. She wasn't looking at me the same way anymore. I didn't push it. I was tired too, after all. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Maybe it was the way she avoided my gaze, or maybe it was the way her phone kept lighting up with messages. There was a chill in the air now, one I couldn't ignore. Something was changing between us, and I had no idea how to stop it. And then, just when I thought I might be overthinking things, it happened. Tracy stood up, heading toward the door. "I'm just going to step out for a bit," she said. "I'll be back soon." And with that, she was gone. I stayed on the couch, staring at the spot where she'd been sitting, a sinking feeling in my chest. I couldn't help but wonder, what the hell was going on? Little did I know that moment would set off a chain of events that would unravel everything I thought I knew about Tracy, and about us. I waited. I didn't know how long I was sitting there, staring at the TV that wasn't even on, my mind racing. I told myself she was just running errands, maybe meeting a friend for coffee or something. But something deep down kept telling me that wasn't the case. I couldn't help myself. I grabbed her purse from the table where she'd left it like a reflex. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but my hands were already rummaging through the contents, pulling out lipstick, gum, and some old receipts. Then, buried at the very bottom, I found it. A bra. A damn bra. I stared at it for a moment, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't hers. I knew that. It was a lacy red number that didn't belong anywhere near her wardrobe. I couldn't breathe for a second. My brain was just spinning. I pulled it out, held it in my hands, and my thoughts were all over the place, confusion, anger, disbelief, but mostly this overwhelming feeling of dread. I checked the tags. Nothing unusual. But who else would it be? Why would it be in her purse hidden away like that? It didn't make sense. She never carried extra lingerie with her. And it wasn't like she was going to some lingerie store to buy a gift. I started putting the pieces together. Her odd behavior, the phone calls, the quick exit. I had a terrible feeling that this wasn't just some misunderstanding. No, this was something much worse, and deep down I already knew what it was. My heart started racing, but I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to call her, ask her straight up, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I sat there holding the bra, feeling like the world was closing in on me. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something else. I didn't even notice how much time had passed until I heard the front door creak open. Tracy stepped inside, her face not even registering surprise when she saw me holding the bra. "Why are you going through my things?" Her voice was cold, distant. I hadn't heard it sound like that before. I froze, not sure what to say. "Whose is this?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking, the knot in my stomach tightening. Tracy's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she quickly turned her gaze away. "It's nobody's," she said, brushing past me. "Just put it down. You're overreacting." But I wasn't overreacting. Not anymore. I had the proof in my hands and it wasn't going away. I wanted to scream to demand the truth, but instead I sat there helpless. Tracy disappeared into the bedroom, and I was left with the mess she'd just made of my heart. I couldn't sit there any longer, not with my mind racing, not with that bra still lingering in my thoughts like some kind of sick joke. I had to know the truth even if it broke me. I stood up, the bra still clutched in my hand, and walked to the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack I saw Tracy sitting on the bed, her back turned to me, clearly avoiding my gaze. "Tracy," I said, my voice coming out more calm than I felt. "We need to talk." She didn't respond at first. Just kept staring at the wall like it was more interesting than anything I had to say. I stepped inside, holding the bra between us, my hands trembling slightly as I held it out. "Whose is this?" I repeated, my voice a little firmer this time. She turned around, her face a mask of annoyance. "What's your problem? Why are you making this a big deal?" Her tone was sharp, defensive, like she was already rehearsing the lie in her head. I could feel my blood pressure rising, my heart pounding in my chest. "Don't play dumb. This is not just some mistake. You didn't just find this in your purse. So tell me, whose is it?" She sighed, rolling her eyes, clearly not wanting to give me the satisfaction of getting an answer. "It's nothing," she said dismissively, flipping her hair like she was annoyed with me for even asking. "Just drop it, okay?" I felt the anger bubbling inside me, threatening to spill over. I was holding back, but barely. "No, Tracy, I won't drop it. I need the truth. Now. What the hell is going on?" She stood up now, pacing the room like she was trying to figure out how to spin this. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she stopped, looked me dead in the eyes, and said something that made my stomach drop. "I'm seeing someone else, okay? Happy now?" My breath caught in my throat. The words hit me like a freight train, knocking the wind out of me. I couldn't speak at first. I just stared at her, waiting for her to say it was some kind of joke, some twisted version of the truth, but no. She was serious. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine now. "It's Jack," she added quietly, almost as an afterthought. "My boss. It's been going on for a few months." I could feel the blood draining from my face. Jack. Her boss. My mind reeled. All those late nights at work, all the excuses. All the things I never questioned. How could I have been so blind? I took a step back, the weight of her confession sinking in like a ton of bricks. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. "How long?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer immediately. She looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but I wasn't going to let her avoid the question. "Tracy, how long has this been going on?" I asked again, my voice stronger now, a mix of anger and hurt. "A few months," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this with you. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but it's not working. Jack makes me feel alive, you know? He's everything you're not." Her words stung, each one landing with precision, cutting deeper than I could have ever imagined. I just stood there, frozen. My mind couldn't process everything she was saying. "So, you've been seeing him behind my back this whole time? You've been lying to me about everything?" She nodded, her eyes cold, like she'd already made her peace with it. "I didn't want to hurt you, but it's been too long now. I've made my choice." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted with everything. And now she was telling me that she'd been sleeping with someone else, someone who wasn't me. I didn't say anything more. I didn't even know what to say. Instead, I turned around and walked out of the room, the sound of her voice calling my name fading behind me. But I couldn't look back. Not now. Not after everything. The damage was done. I left the house that night. I didn't know where I was going, just needed to get away. My mind was spinning. I ended up sitting in a parking lot, not really sure why I was there, just needing space. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and went through old texts with Tracy. All those sweet messages, now they felt like lies. I was a fool, thinking everything was fine. She was seeing Jack. Her boss. behind my back. I didn't want to go back to the house, not yet. I needed to breathe. Eventually, I ended up at Jake's apartment. He was the one person who could handle this. I didn't say much at first. I just dropped onto the couch, feeling like the weight of the world was crushing me. "Dude, what happened?" Jake asked. I barely whispered. "Tracy's been cheating on me. With Jack." Jake didn't say anything for a minute. Then he muttered, "Damn. I'm sorry, man." I let out a sigh. I didn't see it. I thought everything was fine, but she's been lying this whole time. Jake was quiet for a moment. "You gonna confront him?" I shook my head. "I don't even know if I care anymore. She made her choice." Jake nodded. "You deserve better, man." I didn't feel better hearing it. I just felt numb. The next few days were a blur. I stayed away from home, crashing at Jake's place, trying to avoid the reality of what was happening. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see Tracy's face, hear her words. "I've been seeing someone else." I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. I didn't know how. I wasn't ready to face her, to hear her excuses. But I also couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. She'd made her choice. It was clear now. And I wasn't a part of it anymore. Jake kept checking in on me, and to his credit, he was doing his best to keep me distracted. But I wasn't really living, just existing. I'd go through the motions, eat, sleep, stare at the TV. My phone was a lifeline to the outside world, but I didn't want to face the truth in it. Then, on the third day, my phone buzzed. A message from Tracy. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a good minute before I even thought about replying. Part of me wanted to ignore it, keep running from it all. But another part of me wanted answers, needed them, even though I wasn't sure I could handle what she had to say. I sat there, staring at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed a response, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. I couldn't do this. Not yet. I put the phone down. The message sat there, unanswered, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. At some point I'd have to face her. And when I did, I wasn't sure what I'd say, but I knew I'd be different. This was the end of everything I thought I knew. I didn't expect her to show up at Jake's place. But there she was, standing in the doorway, looking like she'd been waiting for the right moment to walk in. I didn't invite her. I didn't even want to see her. But there she was, with that look in her eyes, the one that said she was sorry, or at least she thought she was. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft, tentative, like she was afraid I'd break apart if she said the wrong thing. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to yell, to ask how she could do this to me, but something in me just went still. I nodded, more out of obligation than anything else. She stepped inside, and Jake, who'd been on the couch with me earlier, quickly excused himself. He didn't need to be here for this. I appreciated it, even though it made the whole thing feel that much more real. Tracy sat down on the arm of the chair across from me, her hands clasped together, looking down at her lap. She didn't say anything at first, and I didn't either. The silence between us felt like it stretched on forever, suffocating us both. Finally she spoke, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry, for everything. For lying to you, for what I did. I didn't mean to hurt you. I never did." I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I wasn't ready to let it out. "Not yet. You've been lying to me for months, Tracy. And now you're sorry." My voice cracked, and I immediately hated myself for showing any weakness. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away before she could touch me. I wasn't ready for her touch. "Not now." I don't know what else to say," she said. Her eyes were wet, but the tears didn't look genuine. Maybe they were, but all I saw was guilt. Guilt for herself, not for me. "Jack, he made me feel special, you know? Like I mattered. And I wasn't getting that from you anymore." The words stung. They didn't surprise me, but they hurt like hell. "So that's it? You just gave up on us? You decided I wasn't enough?" She looked down, not meeting my eyes. "It wasn't that simple. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did." I sat back, my mind racing. So, all those late nights, all those times you told me you were busy, that's what you were doing? Tracy nodded, barely able to keep her eyes on mine. Yes. I let out a deep breath. This was the truth. The one I'd been avoiding for days. But hearing it from her mouth made it worse. I can't do this anymore, Tracy, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. You've already made your choice and it wasn't me. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. Not with you. The room felt colder now. There was no warmth left between us. Tracy didn't say anything else. She just stood up, slowly, and headed for the door. I'm sorry, she muttered again before walking out. I didn't chase after her. I didn't even try to say anything more. It was done. The part of me that still wanted to believe in us, in our marriage, had died the second she told me the truth. And with that, she was gone. I just sat there for a while, staring at the door she'd left through, feeling a strange mix of relief and pain. It was over. The next few days were nothing but a haze. Tracy's absence in the house was louder than I expected. I kept expecting her to come through the door, to call or text, but nothing. Just silence. It hit me harder than I thought it would. Jake checked in, but I didn't have much to say. I didn't know what to do next. There was no manual for this. Part of me wanted to confront Jack, to make him feel what I was feeling, but another part just wanted to let it go. I spent the days alone, wandering through the house, touching things we'd picked out together. The pictures on the walls. The coffee mug she always used. It felt like I was slowly losing every piece of my life. I didn't know what I was supposed to hold on to anymore. I started to realize how empty my days were without her. How routine everything had become. I missed something, but I wasn't sure if it was her or the idea of her. The life we had before all of this. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't forgive her. Not now. It wasn't until I went through our old photos that it hit me. I wasn't just mourning the loss of Tracy. I was mourning the loss of the life I thought I had. The good times. The vacations, the plans, the dreams we talked about. They were all built on lies. I sat on the floor, surrounded by pictures of us, smiling, laughing, looking so damn happy, and it felt like someone had taken a wrecking ball to everything I believed in. That wasn't real. What we had, what I thought was love, was built on secrets, on trust that had been shattered long before I even knew. I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself. For not seeing it sooner. For trusting someone who clearly didn't feel the same way. I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to let it all go. It took me a full week to make the call. 7 days of waking up, dragging myself out of bed, staring at the empty side of the bed where Tracy used to sleep, and trying to push down the pit in my stomach. I couldn't keep doing this, existing in this space of pain and confusion. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. The first step, I realized, was cutting the ties. For real. Tracy wasn't coming back. And even if she did, it didn't matter. What we had was broken beyond repair. The trust was gone. The love I thought was there was tainted by the lies, by the affair. I couldn't go back to that. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at my phone for what felt like forever. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the house was quiet, and it felt like I was the only one left in the world. My thumb hovered over the number I had saved in my contacts for the lawyer. I knew I had to call. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was something I needed to do. I finally dialed. Hello, this is Claire. How can I help you? Her voice was calm, professional. It made the weight on my chest feel a little less heavy, a little less suffocating. I need a divorce, I said, the words coming out slower than I expected. My wife. She cheated on me. I need help figuring out the next steps. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear her typing, probably getting my information into the system. I'm sorry to hear that, she said after a moment. We can definitely help with that. Let's go over the details. When would be a good time to meet in person? And just like that, it felt real. This was the beginning of the end. This was me taking control back of my life, even though it felt like 1,000 pieces of me were being shattered at once. I was doing what I had to do, but that didn't make it easier. After I hung up, I sat there for a few minutes, not really sure what to do next. Part of me wanted to dive right into fixing everything, get the paperwork done, move forward, force myself to feel like I was doing something productive. But another part of me just wanted to collapse into the couch and forget the world existed. I had to keep going. I had no choice. I had to fix myself first before I could even think about fixing anything else. The process wasn't going to be quick, and it wasn't going to be easy. But it was the first step, and it was the only thing I could do to move forward. The days after the call were oddly quiet. I had made the decision to move forward, but it felt like I was stuck between the past and what came next. The house felt different without Tracy, but it also felt like I was living in limbo. I didn't hear from her. Part of me expected her to reach out, apologize, maybe beg for forgiveness. But there was nothing. And as much as I hated to admit it, I was relieved. I didn't want to hear her excuses again, or get strung along by empty words. But the silence stung too. I kept checking my phone, hoping for some message, some sign that she was sorry enough to fix things. But nothing. It wasn't the anger that hurt anymore, it was the emptiness. Tracy was the one person I trusted, and now she was gone. Just like that. I kept myself busy. I worked out more, spent time with Jake, tried to distract myself. But every night when I came home to an empty house, the silence hit again. It didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like I was just waiting for something to change. I started going through old things I hadn't touched in years. Photos, birthday cards. It felt strange. I realized how much of myself I had given up for her, all the times I ignored the little signs that something wasn't right. The fog had cleared, and the truth was staring me in the face. Tracy was gone, and it was time for me to live without her. A couple of weeks passed, and slowly things started to feel less heavy. I wasn't sure when it happened exactly, but one night, sitting on the couch with a beer in hand, I realized I was actually starting to feel a little better. Not whole, not completely healed, but better. The weight that had been crushing my chest for weeks was lightening bit by bit. I was no longer waking up with that pit in my stomach, no longer dreading the silence in the house. The days didn't feel as long. I wasn't thinking about Tracy as much, and when I did, I wasn't consumed by rage or sadness. I was accepting it. What happened? What she did. What I'd lost. It wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't going to forget. But I could move forward. I was out with Jake one night when I realized I'd laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. I wasn't faking it either. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a distraction. It was genuine. I laughed at something stupid, something small, and for the first time in a long time I realized I was still me. I didn't need Tracy to be happy. I didn't need her to feel whole. I was starting to understand that I could build myself back up again, piece by piece, moment by moment. It wasn't perfect. But it was enough for now. A few weeks later I decided to make a real change. It wasn't something drastic, but I needed to do something that would help me take control of my life again. The house felt like a reminder of everything I had lost, so I decided to move out. It wasn't about running away from the past, but more about reclaiming space for myself. Somewhere I could start fresh. I found a small apartment in a quieter part of town. It was nothing fancy, just a basic place, but it was mine. It didn't feel like I was living in the shadow of what used to be. No more empty rooms, no more traces of Tracy's presence. I spent the first few nights just sitting in the quiet, letting the space sink in. It felt different, but in a good way. For the first time in ages, I felt like I was the one who had control of where I was going. The move wasn't the instant cure-all. I still had my moments where I'd remember the life we had and feel that pang in my chest. But it was a start. A step in the right direction. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it felt like I was finally heading towards something better. Something mine. A month in, I was starting to settle into my new routine. I wasn't completely healed, but I was doing better. Work was keeping me busy, and I was spending more time with friends. The apartment felt like home, and for the first time in a long while, I actually looked forward to the future. Then one evening I bumped into an old friend, Samantha, at a bar. We'd been close in college, but life had gotten in the way, and we'd lost touch over the years. She was the same, easygoing and full of energy. It was like picking up where we left off. We talked, laughed, and even grabbed dinner afterward. It wasn't a romantic thing, but there was something about the night that felt different. For the first time since the breakup, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the past. I was just enjoying the present in the moment with someone who actually saw me. As we parted ways, she gave me a hug and said something that stuck with me. "You've been through a lot, but you're handling it better than most people would. Just keep being you. You'll find your way." It was a simple thing, but it hit me hard. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until she said them. Maybe I wasn't completely broken. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe I was finding my way back to myself, piece by piece. It wasn't a huge breakthrough, but it was enough to remind me that I wasn't alone in this. There were still good people in my life, and I was still capable of moving forward. It was a small moment, but it was the kind of thing that made me believe a little more in the future. As the weeks went on, I started to accept the new normal, life without Tracy. It was strange at first, like trying to figure out who I was without the person I'd spent so much of my life with. But slowly I got used to the quiet. I got used to being on my own, making decisions for me instead of for us. I kept myself busy with work, hanging out with friends, and finding new hobbies to fill the space. I started picking up things I dropped when I was with Tracy, going for runs again, reading books that had nothing to do with our life together. I even started cooking for myself more, something I used to enjoy but hadn't done in ages. I realized somewhere along the way that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was actually living again. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The weight had lifted, and I wasn't constantly carrying the burden of betrayal. There were still tough days, days where I missed the idea of what could have been, but those moments didn't own me anymore. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment with a cold beer in hand, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't that everything was fixed or that the pain had disappeared, it was just that I was okay. I was figuring things out day by day, and that was enough. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a while, I was starting to think that maybe it was worth finding out. It's been a while now and things have shifted. I'm not where I thought I'd be, but I've come further than I expected. The days are no longer weighed down by Tracy's absence, and the silence doesn't feel as heavy anymore. Life has slowly started to feel more mine. I've reconnected with old friends, found a rhythm that works for me, and started to believe that I might actually be able to love again someday, just not right now, and that's okay. I've learned that healing isn't a straight line, and some days are better than others. But the important thing is that I'm moving forward, even when it's messy. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not rushing to fill the space Tracy left behind. But I'm open to whatever comes next. I've realized that I don't need someone else to define who I am. I can build that on my own. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually on the right path. The betrayal, the pain, they still sting, but they've also made me stronger. I'm more aware of what I deserve, and I won't settle for anything less. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning, growing, and finding a new way to live. And for now, that's enough.
Goodbye.